So I finally finished the big one. Old Sandy Branderman, Wind of Truth, Book 5 of the Stormlight Archive. And I went into this book not wanting to hate it, but expecting to hate it, because I didn't like the last book. When the series first came out and I was a much younger person, 15 years ago, I was really into it. I was really into Sanderson. But I've certainly become part of the more cynical group of people who see Brandon as a very popular figure, and people claiming that he's the greatest sci-fi writer, or sorry, fantasy writer, when he's clearly not. Anyway, so I went in expecting this to be really bad, and the first 400 pages were, but I eventually got into it and I started to enjoy it. But boy, is it a long book. I think it's way too long, like 1,300 pages. And that was my not argument, but my complaints about Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, that they're just so long. Like we've had, it's different in this book, but so far in the series we've had literally over 5,000 pages of Kaladin being sad. And if Kaladin's character can't change from being a sad boy in 5,000 pages, like, what are you doing as a writer? But anyways, but the characters have changed in this book. But it's still, it's just so long. I don't know if people expect fantasy books to be long, but I don't think a book like this needs to be this long. Especially since plot-wise, nothing really happens. I mean, the whole plot takes place over 10 days. 10 days, and it took them this much words to get through 10 days. And like I said, most of it, nothing plot-wise really happens up until the end, like a Sanderson book. But, yeah, it's mostly just character development. Characters finding themselves and coming to terms with issues that they have, which is his strength, I will say. He is very good at writing, not a self-help book, but I don't know, he's really good at writing depression, autism spectrum disorder, loneliness, rage, all these sort of neuroses and whatnot. He is really good at doing that, and that's the part that I appreciated most about Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, was Kaladin's depression felt so real and believable to me, whereas the rest of the book was very, very young adult, very not real. Anyway, so I took notes because I said a lot, like nothing happens in this book, but I do have 12 pages of notes to try and get through the whole plot. I found this book wasn't so much things happening as it was reveals and lore, tidbits, dumps, explanations, expositions. We got a lot of stuff in this book, which I enjoyed. I like a mystery, but I also like knowing things, and this book was giving us things over and over again, which was nice. But I said it's still young adult. Unfunny humor, like the jokes in it, like Shallan says things and thinks, oh, I'm such a clever girl. She's just an annoying little teenager, which I think she's 19 in the book, and it really shows. Like, unnatural dialogue. This is, I noticed more in the first few hundred pages, but they, like, I have it written down here. Shallan said at one point, "We have to stop the ghost bloods." Like, why would she ever say that line out loud? The person she's talking to, I can't remember if it's her Spren or if it was one of the other Radiants, like, they'd be like, yeah, no, duh, that's like your whole thing, that's our whole reason. She's not saying it to remind herself, oh yes, I must defeat the ghost bloods. She's not telling the audience so we can be sitting there reading, oh yeah, that's what she's doing, she has to defeat the ghost bloods. It's like, it's just so obvious, and like, you would never actually say that in real life. But I guess that's part of Sanderson's charm, is that he's so easily accessible, and it's so easy to read the book. You don't really have to think much. You just sort of, it's like a movie. You just sit there and turn off your brain and read, and you can understand everything. But a lot of the dialogue, like there was another line when Um, some guy said to Dalinar something, he's like, we should go downstairs and do this thing. And then Dalinar immediately says, yes, let us go downstairs and do that thing. Like, just repeats what the guy had just said that they should do, but says it in like an order, because I'm Dalinar. And it's just like, no one would ever talk like that. Yeah, so I said here, Sanderson's fantasy is literally the Marvel of fantasy novels. So if you're a big fan of Marvel and comic books and superheroes, specifically the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is the book series for you. It's easy to digest and understand. It's easily accessible, turn off your brain fun, but also massively complex. Not complex in like a difficult to understand way, but complex in that there are so many different parts. And it requires you to engage in numerous parts of side content to have the full context and understanding of all the references. So if you just go in to the theaters to watch Avengers and you've seen none of the other Marvel movies, you're going to miss a lot. If you've seen sort of the mainline Marvel movies and you go in to see Avengers, there's still going to be references and nods to like, oh, you watched that Netflix television show, or you watched, or I guess it wouldn't be Netflix now, that Disney Plus series. And there's so many in his Cosmere, there's so many different pieces that if you haven't read, you'll come across chapters that make no sense and have nothing to do with anything. But if you have engaged with those pieces, I'm sure it's awesome. And you're like, no way, this is all connected. And oh, that's the guy from this thing. And if you're into it, I'm sure it's really cool. But as someone who isn't, it's very much like for the first first 500 pages or so, I was literally on the wiki looking up characters, looking up events, like who is this character, trying to remind myself from the other books, but also like I haven't read Warbreaker, so I don't know that, so I had to read about what the Warbreaker magical system is and the history of those books and plot summaries of those, and like there's just so much. And like I read Mistborn. I read the first 3 Mistborn books plus the 4th Mistborn book into the next saga, whatever. I also read the Edge Dancer short story and the Dawn Shard short story and all the Stormlight archive and even Elantris, which was awful. But there's still so much, and it's like, oh, well, actually, if you would have read the Mistborn secret history, you would clearly see that Kelsier is not actually dead and is in fact Lord Thydekar, the Lord of Scars. Like, just stuff like that where, again, if you are really into it, it's super cool, but if you're not, there's just a lot of stuff in the book that you're like, huh, what is this? What does this mean? What relevance is this? Anyways, this is not meant to be a whole bunch of critiques and complaints, but it is going to be. And I'd love to hear if people disagree or people have different opinions. I'd love to hear them in the comments. Because again, like, I enjoyed the book, but here are my complaints. Also, the world of Roshar, so the planet that they're on, Roshar, because like it's weird to even say planet, but planets are now a thing in this world. The world of Roshar in Wind and Truth feels so much different than the world in Way of Kings, which had been written 15 years ago, but is only set a few years before the events of Wind and Truth. So only a few years has happened since that first Way of Kings, but in our world, 15 years has passed since Sandy Branderman has been written it. So he's changed a lot as a writer, as a person, I'm sure. And so the world feels so different. There are people from other planets walking around and everyone is okay with it. They're just like, oh yeah, that's an off-worlder. Like in Way of Kings, we didn't even know that there was planets. We just knew there was the world, which is very strange. Everyone seems to know and understand the nature of history and the gods now. So back in Way of Kings, like there was Foreignism and the heralds and the Almighty, but now everything, Dalinar sort of blew everything wide open, and everyone sort of just knows and accepts the true version of history, which I don't think would happen in 2 years. And maybe that's not the case, but it seems the case in the book. Everyone is very socially liberal and modern in Wind of Truth, whereas 2 years previous, the first book, they were extremely medieval, oppressive. They had slavery, strict class hierarchy, which just seems to have gone out the window. Like, not just light eyes and dark eyes, but within each of them, there was different castes of people who were better than others. Slavery was totally accepted and normal. No one even questioned it. Why would they question it? And now, in Wind of Truth, slavery is totally gone. women there was an extremely gendered society, like men can't read and women have to have their hand covered, which still exists. It's just not really mentioned much in the books. But like, women are leading, women are performing the same roles as men, which, I mean, of course they should, and it makes a much better story when you have gender equality. But it seems so so unrealistic that the world would change that quickly, and it just accept things that quickly. Sanderson has clearly grown as a person, not necessarily as a writer. I said, whoops, that's mean. But it's made the world change too drastically in too short a time. I think it's really cool that he has gay characters, multiple gay characters, especially in this book, where there's a big focus on even a trans character in Azir, which was even like a funny moment. Like, I think it was Adeline misgenders this guy, and then the guy's like, no, I'm actually a man. I have my papers, because it's Azir and there's bureaucracy, and like, to get a gender change, you just fill out some paperwork. But I thought that was really, really handled well, and like the character was not misgendered after that, was properly gendered, and it was even brought back at one point later on briefly, and I think became one of the unoathed by the end of it. But I could be wrong with that. That might not actually be the case. I don't know if he did. Cool if he did. Anyways, so despite all of those things that are not great about it, I mean, if you want another Brandy Sandman book, you got it. It is what you expect. So now I'm going to try and go through the plot, which I'm going to go through mostly the history of Roshar and the gods, from what I understand it. That's sort of the main part. And then the actual events of the characters in the book, which is much shorter. So like I said, what the main bulk of this is the lore dump of how the world came to be, and the gods and everything. And then I'll explain what the characters did, which was mostly deal with their past issues. And then of course we had the grand finale, where sort of everything went out the window, and it was a plot twist, but like not really an unexpected one. Like, we knew something weird was going to happen, but kind of throwing the whole structure of the world and the magic system and everything out the window. Not really that, but, and we'll get to that. I'm jumping ahead. So gather around, story time. So 10,000 years ago, Roshar is inhabited by a people who are later to become known as the Singers, and 3 old gods, which I think the old gods are the first time they're mentioned here, which are Night, Stone, and Wind. Stone we get through Venli's perspective of the Singers, seems to be connected more with the Singers. Wind, Kaladin seems to be more connected with the Wind. Night, we don't really get much about the Night, although there is, like, what is it, the Night Watcher? There is that, not unmade, but that spren of cultivation who's somehow connected with Night, so there's some connection with Night, cultivation, and whatever, but again, we don't really explore it that much in this book. Anyways, 3 old gods, Night, Stone, and Wind. These were all created by Adonalsium. I have to actually say these words out loud for the first time ever. Who is like the one true god who created the whole universe. But then, of course, Adonalsium is shattered into 16 shards. So he's killed, and his aspect, I say his, I should say their, I don't know the gender of the Almighty. I shouldn't assume a male gender. Is shattered into shards, which are then gobbled up by their murderers. 2 of these new gods come to the Rosharan system, which consists of 3 planets. So the Rosharan system, the sort of star system, which will be later known as Ashen. Ashen has a different name that is mentioned, but I can't remember it. It doesn't really matter. Braze, which has weird properties, including a metal core or something that attracts souls, which is important and also convenient. And also Roshar. So the 2 gods that show up are Cultivation and Honor, the 2 shards. And they go and hang out on Roshar. And we're getting all this through Honor's perspective. Honor, who, the shard of Honor is taken up by the person Tanabas, who is known as Tanner by Odium, which I like Tanner, being called Tanner. Anyways. So they weren't supposed, these shards weren't supposed to go together. They were supposed to be separate, and that, so that's sort of the first oath that Honor breaks, is he's in love with Cultivation, Core, I can't remember her full name, but she's Core, she's also a dragon. I don't think we've ever heard mention of dragons in Stormlight Archive, but no, she's just a dragon who ascended to godhood and is now cultivation. But they're in love, so they go back to Roshar together. And again, the power of Honor is like, whoa, you said we're not doing this, and you're breaking your word. But Honor's like, no, it's cool, I love her, whatever. It's really important to note that the aspect Honor, which is what we're learning about in this book, is that Honor is not doing what is right, but Honor, the power of Honor, wants to do sort of strict follow the law, like in terms of like alignments. It's not lawful good, it's lawful neutral. It's just or true lawful. Kind of like Nail, where even if it's doesn't hurt anyone, or even if it's the best choice, it will still go against it if it breaks oaths or promises or whatnot. Anyways, so they're in love and they show up on Roshar and hang out there. So so that starts Tanner breaking oaths and causing the power of Honor to want to break away from him. Honor and cultivation, they hang out, they make sprens, they attune to the rhythm of the land. So like Honor makes some sprens that are just his, cultivation makes some spren that are just hers, and they both mix and make their own sprens. They're like a mix of the two. And they sort of become gods to the singers, and then that's when the singers become known as the singers, because there's this like rhythm, this sort of tone, this music to Roshar. The wind has its own sound. I don't know. Anyways, music. So meanwhile, Odium, the shard of Odium means hate, has gone to Ashen, what becomes known as Ashen, and has gotten the humans there, because humans live there, to worship him as the god Passion. He's also gone out and murdered 3 other shards of Adonalsium. So 3 of the other gods and shards have been killed by Odium. Odium did not take the power of those shards into himself after he killed them. He sort of left the shards unoccupied. One of the ones he killed destroyed like a whole star system. It was like extremely violent. Anyways, he's not a great guy. So Odium grants a portion of his power to these humans, allowing them to have a world war using magical powers. One of those nations serving Odium is led by the king Yezrian. Not Jezrien, but apparently in Rosharan, the J's are pronounced like Y's. But we see that, I guess that's Alethi, because we see that like Yezrien is called Yazir in Azir or something, like with an actual Y. Anyway, same with Yasna, which is I didn't want to accept, but I accept it now. So Yezrien is this king. He's not sort of the main empire that follows Odium, but he is sort of one of the nations that is following Odium. And they're opposed to a nation or group of people, which are, I don't know if they're led by this guy Makabaki, or just this guy Makabaki is part of these people. So Makabaki, who gives his name to the Makabaki region of Roshar, and his nephew named Nail, which is kind of cool. So Honor's like, what's going on in this other planet, Ashen? What? Odium's here. This isn't good. Let me just see what he's up to. Oh, he's creating a giant world war that's destroying everything. So he tries to help out Honor, tries to help out Makabaki and those opposed to Odium. Eventually the war gets out of hand, probably due to the Search of Division. So they mentioned this a few times, that the Search of Division caused Ashen to burn. So if you think division like actual fission, breaking apart of nuclear bonds in an atom, which of course creates a nuclear explosion, the world goes nuclear and the sky literally catches fire. So like the planet is toast. The remaining humans from both sides escape to Roshar through a portal made by Ishar, again one of the soon-to-be heralds. Yezrien and his people see Odium for what it is and turn to Honor. So the world gets destroyed. Yezrien teams up with Makabaki and Nail and is like, look, this Odium guy, this Passion guy, he's obviously bad news. Sorry we've been fighting against you and with him, but hey, we're hearing this music, this sound, these tones of a nearby planet. Ishar, he's super powerful with like traveling Elsecaller magical portal powers. He's gonna make a giant portal, and everyone, both sides, and whatever animals and plants they can take with them are gonna travel to Roshar. And they land in Shinovar, which is the furthest west province, and because of that, the high storm is weak there, and so they can sort of set up and have like a place like Ashen, only on Roshar. So that's great. The human refugees are aided by the Singers, who grant them Shinovar to live in. But humans being humans, they keep expanding out and start a forever war with the Singers. Having 3 shards on one planet is an issue, because of course odium comes with them. So now we got odium, cultivation, and honor all on this one planet. So they make an agreement locking them to the planet and limiting their powers so that they won't destroy Roshar like Ashen. So honor and odium are like, look what happened to Ashen. We don't want that to happen to Roshar. Let's make a deal. And cultivation's there too. She's like, okay, that you guys can give your powers to the humans, but they have to be limited so that you don't end up blowing up the world. And for some reason, in some way, this also locks odium to Roshar. Odium can't go out into the Cosmere and kill other gods now, which the rest of the shards / gods are like, great, we don't have to deal with odium. Like, he can do whatever he wants on Roshar. We don't care. He's not our problem anymore, which is an issue that comes up at the end of the book. So Honor and Ishar found the Oath Pact, where 10 humans are granted surges, pieces of Honor's power, as well as immortality, which is separate. Anyways, and because of this previous connection to odium, it sets a lock on odium within the system. Odium responds by creating the fused immortal souls of singers to fight in perpetuity. So the fused are these singers who also have magical powers, but when they die, they can be reborn into the body of another singer, and their soul persists. Due to the unique aspects of the nearby planet Braze, very convenient, whenever the fused and heralds die, they go to Braze. So their souls are not taken into the spiritual realm, but are instead go to the planet Braze, also known as Damnation. The heralds act as a lock on the fused and odium's power, holding them there until, from excessive torture, one of the heralds breaks and willingly returns to Roshar, releasing the fused back to the world and starting the process, which becomes known as a desolation over again. So we sort of knew this, that these desolations are when the Voidbringers, the fused, come to Roshar, have a great big battle. They manage to kill them all, but then the heralds, who either killed or not killed, have to go back to Braze and sort of hold the line and become eternally tortured until just one of them breaks. And as soon as one of them breaks, then the gates are open and everything floods back to Roshar and starts all over again. We knew this. The Spren made by cultivation and honor form bonds with humans, giving rise to the Night's Radiance. Odium counters with the Regals, who are mortal singers with access to a surge. The desolations last for millennia. Again, I'm skipping over a lot. This isn't a huge lore dump. This is just meant to be sort of a summary of the book, so I don't have to spend 3 weeks reading it again. But the heralds start to break down because they're only human, and when you've lived for millennia, you start to go a little crazy. So finally, at the last desolation, only Talon is killed and sent to Braze. The other 9 heralds all survive, and instead of willingly joining him there, the other heralds abandon him, arguing that he is the strongest, he's never broken. If they return, they're so weak that they would break pretty easily, and then there'd be another desolation very soon. But they're like, Talon, during all these desolations, he's never once broken. Let's just leave him there. He can hold back the tide on his own. Of course, they feel awful about it, and like tons of guilt that lasts millennia. But they abandon their oath honor blades, and walk away. And that's sort of the last desolation. More millennia passed in relative peace until this unmade Ba-Ado Mishram. So the unmade are kind of Spren, but like super powerful Spren made by Odium. So we've got this Ba-Ado Mishram. She usurps some of Odium's power, maybe using this sort of perpendicularity well thing. So it seems like all 3 of the gods have these sort of wells of power, literal fonts of power that exist on Roshar. Odium's is in the Shattered Plains. Again, through this whole book, they're hinting that, oh, there's something in the Shattered Plains. Like, even in previous books, like, whoa, the way the Shattered Plains has been shattered and the symmetricality of it, and something about the 4th moon. There had been another moon, because there's only 3 moons, but there was a 4th one, and it, like, crash-landed on Roshar. But I don't think it's ever fully explained what that means or is. Anyways, Odium's power is there. And I think that's where Ba-Ado Mishram sort of had a little sip and became powerful. And then she wanted to take over kind of take over Odium's role in helping the Singers, because at this point humans have basically conquered all of Roshar. Singers have pressed back to very sort of small places, and they're very dislocated. And at some point, which this is a very important major point, but I don't remember it ever happening, Honor agrees to an oath with her to look after her or something. So at some point, Honor's like, Ba-Adom-Ishram, I will look after you. You do your thing. Don't worry. I got you. I think that had to have happened. Like, it's integral to the plot, but I don't remember it. So we see a scene during the false desolation, when it's not the Voidbringers coming back, because Talon hasn't broken yet, but it is Ba-Adom-Ishram using Odium's power to sort of empower these Singers to fight back against the humans, because they've been so oppressed. So there's this part where one of the Radiants secretly meets with one of the Singers, and it turns out they're in love, and they want to make an agreement, a sort of a peace treaty, and grant the Singers land where they will stay, and they will not break this oath, and they can sort of have peace and live in harmony and whatnot. However, again, see, I'm really foggy about this part. Honor meets up with Odium. So after the Radiants sort of after the Heralds abandoned town, Honor went like on a spirit journey, and he was like, what's this all about, man? And like connects with the land, and like loses 2,000 years or whatever, and then he's suddenly back, and he's like, whoa, what? So for whatever reason, he goes and has like a 1v1 with Odium, and gets really mad at Odium, and they have like a brief clash, and that's what destroys Natanatan, and creates the Shattered Plains. That's why they're shattered, is because of this fight that they had. Nothing to do with the fourth moon. I don't know. He's like, whoa, this is like really bad. I shouldn't do this. We have to find a better way. The planet's going to be destroyed. It's going to be ashen all over again. So shocked by the destruction, the two gods directly clashing, he tries to get Odium to agree to a contest of champions to end things once and for all. He's like, we can't fight. Let's have a proxy fight. Whoever wins that, that'll be the end of it. And Odium's like, okay, I'll agree to this contest, but you have to deal with Ba-Adom-Ishram for me. She's like taking lots of my power, and I'm like kind of weak, and I don't, like, it's just wrong. Like, I forget what he argues, but Honor's like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll deal with Ba-Adom-Ishram. So Honor uses some Radiants that sneak up on this meeting of the Singers, Ba-Adom-Ishram, this peace conference, with the human and Singer who are in love, and the humans betray the Singers, and the Radiants capture Ba-Adom-Ishram in a gem, hide her in the spiritual realm, and doing this because she was so connected to all the Singers, having her sort of torn out of the world, it sort of tore the souls out of, and the minds out of all the Singers, who turned into the sort of dull form Parshendi Parshmen that become the slave race that we know in the Way of Kings. So yeah, not great. Also, the listeners were a thing. So when Ba-Adom-Ishram showed up and was like, hey guys, Odium's been gone for a while because of the desolation's been thousands of years ago, but I'm back. I'm going to give you guys power. We're going to fight the humans. There was a group of list singers who were like, no, we're going to be called the listeners. We're done with this whole fighting thing. We're done with you gods. We're just going to head way out east and just sort of chill. We're going to abandon our forms. We're just going to live. And Ba-Adom-Ishram was like, you know what? I respect that. That's cool. You go do that. I'm not really an evil person. I just want to help you guys out. So if you guys want to go, you guys go. Anyways, so they captured Ba-Adom-Ishram. Honor had betrayed his oath because he apparently made some oath to protect Ba-Adom-Ishram. Since Tanavast had broken his oath with Ba-Adom-Ishram by betraying her, the power of Honor finally rejected Tanavast, who was then promptly killed by Odium. So this has sort of been a running theme, is that Tanavast has constantly sort of gone against his word, or hasn't been honorable according to what the Shard of Honor thinks. So this was sort of the final straw, or a big straw, that ripped Tanavast away from Honor. And sort of in his final moments, Honor creates the Stormfather as like a piece of himself with a piece of his memories and powers. And he's also sort of has a vision of the future that potentially with Honor dead, the Knight's Radiance will then destroy the world and it will be Ashen all over again. And Tanavast sends this vision out to all the Knights Radiant, who see it not as a possible future but as the future. And this causes, I think this is the Recreants. This is when all of the Knights Radiants abandon their oaths, because they're like, whoa, we're going to destroy the world. Like, we have to they abandon all their shard blades and their spren, and break all their bonds, and create all the dead eyes and whatnot. So that happens. And then Tanavast sort of crash lands on the planet in a mortal form, and Odium immediately just kills him. And the power of Honor sort of retreats to the spiritual realm, but it still exists in the form of the Honor Blades and the Heralds and the Spren, and Honor becomes very spread out and loose, but not held by one individual anymore. So then life on Roshar sort of continued for a few more millennia, until the events of, was it Way of Kings or the second one, whenever the true desolation shows up. And previously we had thought, wow, Talon finally broke. He lasted for like thousands and thousands of years, and then he finally broke. Wow, Talon was amazing. No, Talon never actually broke, which I think was really cool. This whole time, they're like, oh, Talon finally broke, and that's what caused the Voidbringers to go back. No, it was a different herald. We find out that Shallan's mother is actually Chana the Herald, and Shallan killed her mother. And Chana only lasted 10 or 15 years on Braze before she broke. And because all it takes is one to break, that caused the return of the Voidbringers, not Talon breaking. Talon remained unbroken. Very cool. And so that made the onset of the true desolation. Yeah. So all that brings us to the end of this book. So that's sort of all of the explanation. I'm sure I got some parts of it wrong, but like I said, this was a huge book. There was so much in it. So the actual events of this book. Kaladin doesn't want to be a killer anymore. He doesn't want to fight. So it seems sort of discongruous. I don't think that's the right word. It seems weird that at the start of this book, Kaladin just gets sent off to Shinovar with Seth. It felt very much like the author's like, I just want to have you separate. Just go over there. We're just going to separate you. So he's like, okay. And Dalinar sends Seth. I'm not even sure why he sends Seth over there. I think Seth just says he has to go because part of Seth's fourth ideal is to cleanse Shinovar. Whatever that means. Not literally, he doesn't really know what it means. And Kaladin, Dalinar sends Kaladin with him because he's like, hey, Kaladin, you don't want to fight anymore? That's okay. Why don't you try this new therapy thing you got going on? Help Seth out, and also help Ishar out. So Ishar, who was the herald, one of the heralds, is still one of the heralds. He had been a god priest of Tukali, ruling this nation, but then he's went and dealt with something with Shinovar. We find out about that. So as they're going through, we're getting flashbacks of Seth's life, which I guess is kind of neat to see where Seth came from. But he killed a man who was in self-defense. So when he was a boy, one of these soldiers was trying to attack him, and so he killed the soldier, which made, because of their weird culture and religion in Shinovar, he goes from someone who adds, a farmer adding to society, to someone who subtracts. And it has to become a soldier. So we see him sort of lead men against raids on Shinovar, and Seth has issues with, he doesn't want to make decisions. He just wants other people to make decisions for him. He's got this weird sort of anxiety where he's like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Just don't make me make a decision. I don't know what is right. I don't know what is wrong. Just someone tell me what to do and I'll do it. Which is, again, is one of Sanderson's sort of, he's really good at that sort of weird psychological mental health issue. Like, this series could be read as sort of like, if someone's going through stuff, not as a self-help book, but kind of as a self-help book, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so in Shinovar, that's where they kept the honor blades that the heralds abandoned, and Shinovar trained individuals using those honor blades, because holding an honor blade grants you the surges associated with that herald. So Shinovar has a number of honor bearers, who are these people who look after the blades and are trained in them. And so they choose Seth, this voice, which the whole time you're thinking is one of the Unmade, is saying, we need to train Seth. He's going to become one of the honor bearers. And so he goes and he trains with all of them, and he his final thing is he has to kill the Windrunner honor bearer, because the Windrunner honor bearer, there's some weird internal politicking where they think the Windrunner one, he isn't okay with this voice that's controlling them all, and he's going to sort of rebel and cause a civil war. So they get Seth to kill him and take his place, but then Seth's like, I don't trust this voice now. I'm suddenly, for the first time, going to make my own decision about what is right, and actually starts a civil war and is quickly put down, because it turns out his father and also his sister become honor bearers, and maybe his sister becomes later, but his father becomes one of the honor bearers. And so then Seth's like, wait, the one time I actually make a decision for myself, I chose wrong. I didn't know what is right. Just someone make a decision for me, and that's when they sell him into slavery. And he goes off to work for Taravangian eventually, as the assassin in white, and that's sort of the story we know of Seth. Anyways, so in the present he follows that path again. So when they go back to Shinovar, he's sort of following the same path as he did, going to each of the monasteries and challenging the honor bearers, who in this case, when they're killed, sort of explode into smoke. And again, his sister's one of them, and he meets his father again, and it didn't seem like as big of a deal, like meeting his sister and his father, as it could have. It was very strange. He just sort of was like, oh yes, you are my sister and my father, I must kill you, now die. Not quite like that, but it wasn't as impactful. Nail also joins them. Nail's there, and he's like, hello, I am the law, we must follow the law. And Nail's like, keeps contradicting himself here. He's like, the singers are the actual people, original people of Roshar, so their law is the one that I must follow. I must fight against the Knights of Radiance. But then he's also like, we need to make sure the Voidbringers don't come back, and we need to make sure we're ready for a war against the singers. And he's very broken. So a lot of it is Kaladin just talking to them, trying to help them with their neuroses. And Kaladin does eventually help Seth and also Nail. So he helps Seth just by talking to him, and Seth kind of finally comes around. It's weird. I always thought of Seth as like young, like Kaladin's like a young adult, right? But Seth's like middle-aged, just kind of weird. He's like 37 or something. And Kaladin's trying to help Nail, but how do you help a 10,000-year-old immortal, super powerful, messed up person? He does so by practicing playing the song of Roshar on his flute. So before he left, Wit's like, hey, here's a flute, practice this song. Turns out this song is the sort of the song of Roshar, which is what Ishar and the humans on Ashen had heard, and which had led them to Roshar. So Kaladin's playing this, he's getting better at it, but also the wind, like the old god of the wind, is coming back and it's helping him play it. And Nail's hearing it, and he's sort of remembering 10,000 years ago sort of why he signed up for this whole thing and what his actual meaning was. And it sort of eventually breaks Nail, and Nail sort of comes to his senses and is like, okay, fine. He hasn't been fixed, obviously, but he's better now. He's on the good guy's side. When they get to Ishar, Seth has to fight all the honor bearers again, because Ishar's turned them into human fuse, so Ishar's doing this weird... Ishar has sort of his own plans, where he's like... Turns out Ishar had also sort of drunk of the well of Odium, and got some of Odium's power, because he wanted to be able to see the future, and he sort of saw something coming, vague hints, and it seems like Ishar wants to also take over the Cosmere. So he's trying to prepare... He wants to forge a new oath pact, because Jezrien has died. Jezrien's soul in this book is destroyed using anti-light by El, who's this super cool fuse that we don't really get enough of. I'm sure we'll see more of him later. So Seth and El, I'm losing the plot. There's so much going on. Yeah, so all these honor bearers are fighting Seth, And that's when Szeth finally, he hasn't finished his fourth ideal because he needs to cleanse Shinovar yet, but he skips right to the fifth ideal, which is becoming the law. So Szeth's like, I am the law, and like explodes into light and ascends to, like, he becomes the first radiant, I think, to say the fifth ideal, whatever, which again doesn't mean anything, because he does that. He's like, wow, I did it, great. And then he's like to his spren, the high spren, 12241 or whatever its name was trying to explain to him, like, or was trying to control him, like Nail was. And even though his friend sort of came around, and there was this awful scene where Kaladin sort of had a therapy session with that spren and was like trying to help him out, and seemed to help him out, and the spren seems better. But as soon as Szeth says the fifth ideal, he says, hey spren, I don't want you controlling me anymore. I renounce my oaths. Go away. So he becomes like the most powerful radiant, and then immediately renounces his oaths, and the spren leaves him, and he's all alone. So I think I lost track, but Jezrien has died, and so Ishar wants to reforge the Oath Pact using Szeth as the Herald of the Windrunners, taking Jezrien's place. That's his plan. But also he's got this plan where he's sort of creating human fused and creating an army of spren. He's like somehow turning spren physical, taking them from the what's it called, mental realm, mindful realm, Shadesmar, and making them physical in the physical realm. I don't know. He's crazy. So then at some point, and then Ishar's like, you guys don't understand. I've been like holding the Oath Pact together. You think the heralds are messed up? Like, yeah, well, they'd be even more messed up, but I'm holding back a lot of their darkness and their pain and their suffering. He's like, you want to feel what they feel, what I feel? Here it is. And he like puts like the most miserable pain onto everyone there, even Nail, and he's like, yeah, see, this is what I have to deal with. And they're all like totally crippled and like ultra super mega depressed. But then of course Kaladin's like, I've been like this for years, and stands up and is like, yeah, this really sucks. You've been feeling this forever? Me too. And Ishar's like, how can you be so depressed and yet still exist? Kaladin's like, it's my whole character arc. And then Kaladin says the words for the fifth ideal, and also like explodes into light, and through the power of magic and friendship, cleanses the darkness inside Ishar, Kingdom Hearts style or something, I don't know. Gets rid of the odium part of Ishar. And so Ishar is kind of lucid for the first time, and he's like, whoa, what the heck? This is not good. But he's like, at this point, sort of the major events at the end of the book are happening, and they're like, we need to reform the Oath Pact. We need a 10th person. Szeth, who, when he came to, he sort of picked up Nightblood, that weird sword that you had to have read another book to understand what it's all about. But Nightblood now also grants you access to all of the surges, because Nightblood's been hanging out with all the honor blades that they have collected and talking to them. But Nightblood sucks a lot of investiture, Stormlight, life force out of you to wield. And so Szeth uses it to go, and it's like one man against 10 honor bearers. And of course, because he's Seth, he's amazing. He kills them all. However, they run out of Stormlight, and Kaladin was like connected to him and was giving him Stormlight as well. But it sort of ate Kaladin's hand, and it ate Szeth's entire arm, and including part of his shoulder. So this is Szeth's like down and out. So they're like, we need someone to fill in the Windrunner place for the Heralds. Who could possibly do this? And then Kaladin's like, hi, it's me. And then Syl's like, no, Kaladin, you can't. What? You said the whole thing was you didn't want to fight anymore. And he's like, I didn't want to have to fight, but I will still fight if I choose to, or some nonsense. So then they reforge the Oath Pact, and Kaladin ascends to become a herald, an immortal being, whatever. And then the part that's like, I just don't even know. They're like, well, the Oath Pact means that we have to go to Braze, basically go to hell and suffer eternal torture until one of us breaks. What if instead of going there, we send our minds to spiritual realm and we exist in a sort of a paradise state. And then when they torture our bodies, we won't actually feel it. And then we can come back to Roshar and sort of break whenever we choose, and we'll be like super refreshed and not enduring years of torture. They're like, yeah, why don't we do that? Like, why wasn't that in the original Oath Pact? Why was it sending their souls to hell? And then they're like, wait a minute, what if we don't send our souls to hell? What if we send them to heaven instead? Oh, okay. I don't understand that. So this new Oath Pact, whenever they die, which it happens at the end of this, like Kaladin dies, and his body goes to Braze with the other heralds' bodies, but his soul goes to this spiritual realm and exists in sort of a weird vision, holodeck simulation, whatever, and still goes with him. Nail's Spren, however, seems to abandon him and doesn't go with Nail. Seems like the only Spren that goes is Syl, which Sylphrena and Kaladin's relationship is so weird. Like, I never liked Sylphrena. She's literally a manic pixie dream girl. Like, the tropiest trope of sad intellectual young man who suffers from depression, and all he needs is this cheerful, happy girl to come into his life, and the whole reason for her existence is to just be goofy and silly and make him happy. And she's so cute and sweet and childlike. It's just weird. So, like, Syl's whole existence. I thought this book, like, we had Syl POV, and Syl talked about, like, I want to be more than just, like, a manic pixie dream girl for Kaladin. I want to be my own person. But she doesn't really do that. I mean, she does sort of change a little bit through this book, but she's still, her whole existence is just to be a goofy, silly little girl for the sad male protagonist. Anyways, so that was Kaladin and Szeth. However, we also have see, I told you this was going to be a long one. So meanwhile, Dalinar is prepping for his contest with Odium in 10 days. So we got this 10-day, this contest of champions that at the end of, was it Rhythm of War? At the end of Rhythm of War, Odium and Dalinar had agreed to that. We'll each have a champion, just like Honor wanted so long ago, and we'll have a fight. And at the end of the fight, if you win, borders will be frozen. Whoever holds whatever land they hold, they will keep that. We'll have peace, and yeah, if Dalinar wins. So they're like, if the borders will be frozen due to weird technicalities and the law, this means that the capitals of these cities have to hold. And they find out that these armies of Odium are marching on all these different capitals, and so they need to hold the land that they have, specifically the capitals, so that when the contest is over, if they win, they will keep the land. So there's three main places. There's Thalena, where it seems like there's a ton of ships that are heading there to assault it. There's the Shattered Plains, which there's a ton of fused Regals heading to the Shattered Plains to try and take it, and also Azir, the Empire of Azir, where the Oath Gate, which is in the middle of the city, the Odium's forces are going to use the Oath Gate to sort of bring in soldiers and sort of take over the city from there. So those are the three. So Dalinar sends a bunch of Radiants, including the Windrunners and Sigzil, who's leading them in place of Kaladin. Sends them to the Shattered Plains. He sends Adlin and just a handful of elite to hold Azir, and he sends Yasna and a whole bunch of soldiers to Thalena to hold it. So I said all three of these are a huge waste of lives and time. Well, not time, because they're specifically trying to sort of hold for 10 days. As they all fail, but then succeed on technicalities. So they have all these huge epic fights, and they all come to the very end, and then they lose. But then after they lose, it's like, but wait, actually, according to the law, I think you'll find that subsection C says that we actually control the land if we do this, this, and this, and we actually did that. So it doesn't matter that you actually won the battle, we win the war. And I mean, that could be kind of cute once, but for that to happen in every single case was just really dumb. So in Thalena, Odium convinces Queen Fen of Thalena to turn to his side in a debate with Yasna, where he shows her that Yasna is a terrible person. So it turns out that all these ships that were going to assault Thalena, they were all empty, and it was a ruse. So Yasna quickly sends all her troops to the Shattered Plains to reinforce them. And then Odium Taravangian shows up to Yasna and is like, we'll have a debate. I'm going to convince Queen Fen to legally and willingly join my side, and I want you to debate me and prove her wrong. And Yasna's like, well, great. This is my whole thing. I love this. Let's do it. So they have the debate, and it's really dumb. Like, the Queen Fen's choices are stay with Dalinar, the Radiance, and the sort of the pact with Azir and these other nations, or side with the god of hate and be like submissive to him. And she ends up siding with the god of hate because the whole argument is Yasna's actually a terrible person. She tried to assassinate family members. Her morality is really skewed, and her moral philosophy is like really messed up. Oh no, Yasna's a really bad person? Oh, well, I definitely want to sign up with the god of hate then. Like, you're not submitting to Yasna like you're submitting to Odium. Yasna is the nephew of the leader of the coalition, but the coalition itself is made up of so many different peoples, like the Emperor of Azir, these different viziers and high princes and different leaders. Like, Yasna's one of many. Like, you could have been like, oh yeah, no, you're right, Odium. Yasna is a horrible, terrible person, but I'm still going to be on the same side as her. I'm not submitting to her. Like, it was so dumb that, like, Odium was so clever because he made the whole argument about sort of defaming the character of Yasna, when that has nothing to do with, she's not giving, anyways, I'm not going to spend any more time on that. That was just stupid. Ugh. So then the battle on the Shattered Plains goes badly, despite Sigil's competence leading the Windrunners. So Moash shows up. He was blinded in the last one, but then they put like crystal spikes in his eyes, and now he can see investiture. He still has the Yezrian's Oath Blade, Honor Blade, whatever you call it. So I don't even know if I don't think he has a Spren, Moash. I don't know. Moash sucks. Who cares? So Moash has these Fabrials that sort of shut down radiant powers. And he also has an anti-Stormlight dagger that he uses to actually kill Spren. So some of the Windrunners have their actual Spren killed. Some of them have their surges taken away briefly with this Fabrial and then are killed. So Moash is just murdering Windrunners left, right, and center. At one point, he's about to kill Sigil's Spren when Sigil like renounces his oaths and does that, turns Vienta, his Spren, into a Deadeye. However, it prevents her from being killed. And later at the end of this, when the Deadeyes sort of kind of start to come back, Vienta recognizes that what Sigil did saved her life, but still won't talk to him, which I thought was kind of harsh. Anyways, she shuts down Sigil renounces his oaths, become Deadeye rather than blah blah blah. Anyways, they end up fleeing Narak, fleeing the Shattered Plains through the Oath Gate, ostensibly abandoning it, except that they in secret made a deal with Venli and the listeners, who were feigning being on Odium's side. So we're getting lots of Venli POV with the listeners. Again, she's like hearing the stones, speaking to the stones, something about the stones, the old god of the stone. There's something in the center of the Shattered Plains. Turns out it's Odium's sort of well of power. That's why Odium wants to control the Shattered Plains. So as they're going there, the Odium's forces see the listeners and they're like, hey, you guys better team up with us. You better team up with us. They also have Chasm Fiends, like, not as pets, because it turns out Chasm Fiends are like semi-sapient, and they're controlling them. So Venli makes a secret deal with the Windrunners saying, hey, here's what you'll do. Talk to Yasna, she's the queen of the Alethi. Get her to grant me the deed to the Shattered Plains, and we'll make like a peace deal, and then I'll be the leader of the Shattered Plains, and I'll stay on the sort of platform, so that when the day is up, I'll still be here, and Odium wouldn't have forced me off, so that I'm still holding this, and then at the end of the day, we get to keep it. So that's what they do. So when time's up, Venli and the listeners still have control of Narak, and they keep it from Odium. And she literally shows up to El, and El's like, well, today's the day of the tournament. I guess the borders are fixed. Odium wins the Shattered Plains, and she holds up a deed. She's like, actually, technically, we're here, and Yasna gave us this land, and we're not working for you. We're actually our own separate nation state. And Al's like, wow, guess you got me. Cool. All right, boys, wrap it up. Let's go. We lost. I mean, I understand he had to sort of follow the law, but, like, all those people dead, the Spren dead, the Windrunners dead, all this fighting and death, and it was all just actually a technicality, and we get to keep this land. And if that wasn't bad enough, we go to Azir, where Adolin helps the city in a grueling siege at one point. So it's like a very long siege, and there's a whole thing with him connecting with the Emperor, and it doesn't really matter. But they summon a Thunder's class. So a Thunder class starts charging in, and Adolin manages to defeat it with the help of the other shard bearer in Azir. But as he defeats it, it like collapses on him and crushes his leg, and he has to get his leg amputated below the knee, which was kind of a big deal. Like they keep saying, oh, it can be healed by a super powerful radiant once we get back to Earthrew, but it was still like a really big deal. But eventually the city's overrun, and Adolin, Emperor Yonaghan, and a few others retreat to a safe house. Oh, but I skipped the part where I skipped a few parts. Adolin defeats it at the cost of one of his legs. Talon and Ashe, who for whatever reason Dalinar sent these literal heralds to Azir. I don't know why he didn't keep them in Erythriu. But Talon was like comatose the whole time, right? Just sort of mumbling like, the desolation's coming, prepare yourselves, because he was holding for thousands of years. And Ashe was by his side because she like felt really bad and wanted to look after him and kind of like has feelings for him, I think, maybe. Anyways, one of the fused shows up in the infirmary where Talon and Ashe are, and are like, kill all the wounded. That will like really upset the Azish, whatever. And suddenly, as he says that, Talon like stands up and is finally like not lucid, but he's like up. And Ashe is like, "You fools! You could have just had the whole city, but you had to do this." So then Talon goes like full berserk, and along with Ashe kills thousands and thousands of these fused, but then succumbs again, and he dies along with Ashe, who agrees to die at his side this time. She's like, I'm not abandoning him again. Anyways, so then there's like a really grueling couple of days of just, they need every person they can get in the city to form this shield wall to hold back the Voidbringers. Adolin himself has to get in the shield wall, and he's like got a peg leg that he keeps falling on, and he sort of sees what it is to be like, he thought like he was like the greatest fighter ever. Then the Radiants came along, and he was like, oh, I'm not so great anymore. Well, now he's like the lowest of the low soldiers, and he's getting a different perspective, and that part was pretty good. But eventually they break through, and Adolin sort of gets rescued from the front lines, and the Emperor and a few of them all go to the safe house, and they're like, all right, we lost. Some Windrunners are coming, though. They're going to get us out of the city and save us. But then, of course, they're like, actually, according to an obscure law and precedent, the ruler of the city is he who sits upon the throne. So they're like, wait, if we can get the Emperor to sit his butt in this chair when the clock strikes midnight or whatever, when the thing starts, then technically we'll still be in control of Azir and we'll actually win. So it's, again, all the fighting for nothing when it was just a dumb technicality. So they sneak into the throne room, and of course they're like, oh, Yonaghan, he used to be a thief, and so he knows how to sneak into the throne room. Great, whatever. So they go sneak in there, and they're like, wait, this is too easy. I'm sensing a trap. So Adolin's like, I'll go into the throne room alone. I have a peg leg, sure. He goes into the throne room, and Abidi the Monarch is there. This like super powerful, ancient, multi-thousand-year-old fused, who had clashed with Adolin at some point and keeps confusing Adolin for a Radiant, because Adolin has sort of becoming, he doesn't have a bond with his Spren, but he doesn't have a Spren either, but his sword, Maya, who's a Deadeye, throughout this book is becoming more and more lucid, and sort of he talks to her in his brain mind. And during this whole thing, she's like, I'll go off and get some more Spren to help. So he can't summon his sword, but she goes off to sort of get more Spren. And he thinks it's going to be a whole bunch of honor Spren, and they're going to bond a whole bunch of new Windrunners and sort of save the day. Anyway, so Adlin's in the room. Abidi's there. Abidi locks the door behind him. The room is sealed in aluminum, so no Spren could get in. He tries to summon his sword, but he can't summon Maya because, again, with the aluminum. But Abidi's in there. Abidi has a shard blade that he stole from the other shard bearer, and he has Adlin's shard plate that he also stole, because when Adlin lost his leg, his shard plate was given to sort of these other guys to fill in, and they died, and the fused got the shard plate. So Adlin, with no shard blade, no shard plate, with a peg leg, has to 1v1 this multi-thousand-year-old fused in full shard plate, who also has magical powers. And like, it's not like, it's a bit ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. It's just like, I mean, if you're like 15 years old and you watch a lot of anime, you might be like, this fight was so awesome, but it's just so unbelievably unbelievable. Anyways, so Adlin has to 1v1 with the peg leg and nothing but a generic sword, an aluminum candelabra, and the opiates he's high on. I forgot, yeah. So he's in a lot of pain. He hasn't slept. That's another thing. Adlin hasn't slept in like days. He was like fighting on the front lines. He's got to be so exhausted. So this doctor gave him a whole bunch of like concentrated fire moss, whatever. Gave him a bunch of drugs to like get him super high, and like, so he's like all jacked up on drugs. And the aluminum candelabra, because they keep hinting at that aluminum's like this super, it's like gold or platinum. It's this super expensive metal. But it also has magical properties. It can block magic and block shard blades and whatever. So just so happens there's one in the throne room, and he uses it to sort of, not as a shield, but to deflect the shard blade of Abidi. And because Adlin was trained by Zahel and taught how to fight in slippery conditions, he manages to somehow fight with a peg leg. And actually stabs Abidi through the visor faceplate thing, just to one up Kaladin, because Kaladin's sort of the only other person who fought and killed a shard bearer without plate. But of course it's a fused, and just stabbing him with a regular sword through the eye doesn't do anything. He just heals through it. So then the one cool part is when I visualized it. It's a very visual scene. Abidi picks up Adlin, and Adlin's like, he starts hearing voices, or hearing a voice say, "Sir." Multiple people say, "Sir, sir." And Adlin's like, "Please, please help me. I need your help," or whatever. And Abidi then throws Adlin across the room, and he's going to like crash to a wall and just like be crushed and die. But as he's thrown across, the plate spren of Adlin's plate burst apart from Abidi, rush over to Adlin and cover him, and then Adlin slams into the wall, fully armored, not armed. And they actually recognize his peg leg, and the shard plate forms this like prosthetic leg kind of thing that he can actually use, and actually gives traction and grip and motion. So Adlin's like fully back. And then we cut to the group that he had left outside the throne room. The door bursts open, and Abidi's corpse flies across, and Adlin like stomps on it and is like, "Your Highness, I brought the shard blade back that you lost." And then they're still surrounded. Abidi had held back his forces because he wanted to 1v1 Adlin, but now that Abidi's dead, the rest of the forces are going to attack. These like 10 or so were trying to sneak into the throne room. But then Maya's like, "Hey, I brought the Spren." He's like, "Cool, so we can have a bunch of Windrunners?" She's like, No, I didn't bring honor Spren. I brought all the Deadeyes." He's like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, all the shard blades and plates that have sort of been abandoned over the centuries that everyone forgot about." She's like, "I didn't forget about them, so I brought them all back." So Adlin then goes, "Avengers assemble, suit up," and a whole bunch of blades and plates get summoned, and everyone there becomes a shard bearer. And yeah, they have a big wicked fight, and they stick the Emperor on the throne, and because the Emperor's on the throne when the clock ticks midnight, they get to keep Azir. And so again, all the fused and the Voidbringers go, "Oh man, this sucks," and march out of Azir. Oh, and Adlin also Returns from a mission bringing a load of dead eyes that turn into blade and plates for the others. Adelan, who gives the snappy name Unoathed to. So they're not Knights Radiant, they're unoathed. So they don't have access to surges, but they do have access to plate, but the plate's not quite dead like the traditional plate. It's the spren in those plates are starting to come alive, so they have some control over these plate and blades. And they're called the Unoathed. And there's this original 10 of them, or however many, but Maya brought enough spren, dead-eyed spren, that he said they can have another 40 or so more. So potentially in the future, we'll see a group of like 50 elite unoathed. Anyways, the final two storylines, hour 3 of this video. The final two storylines involve Dalinar and Navani, Gavinor, and Rlain, Renar, and Shallan going to the spiritual realm to seek out answers about honor and or find the prison of Ba-Ado-Mishram. So Dalinar and Navani want to find out what's the deal with honor, and that's sort of the 10,000 years ago history that I started this video with, or not started, but you know what I mean. That's what we get revealed from the Dalinar and Navani perspective. The Rlain, Renar, and Shallan group are trying to find Ba-Ado-Mishram's prison, while also fight off the Ghostbloods, who are trying to find it. Which, also the Ghostbloods, what the heck? They're led by this guy, Lord Thydekar, who is Lord Kelsier. Kelsier was like the super awesome good guy hero in Mistborn, and he died. But now apparently he's not dead, and also is like a super arch villain of the universe. But if you read this other book, you'd understand it. It's stupid. It's dumb. Yeah, Shallan is chased by the Ghostbloods throughout the visions, who are led by the evil mastermind Thydekar, who is actually the hero Kelsier, who died in Mistborn. And so Shallan kills them while overcoming her mental problems, and part of that is like seeing the scene when she kills her mother and reveals that her mother is the Herald, Shanna. She's the daughter of a Herald, and it's because she killed her mother that her mother eventually broke and sort of started this whole thing. Good job, Shallan. But yeah, this whole sequence is like Renarin dealing with his not dealing with his autism, because that sounds awful, but dealing with his mental issues and also his sort of feelings for Rlain. So not just is Rlain of the same gender as him, but is a different species than him. Which is interesting. You can date someone of a different gender and someone of the same species, but when it's different species, same gender, it becomes an issue. Anyways. And then Rlain's dealing with sort of not being a listener, not being a singer, not being a human, sort of a person of all different peoples, but of no one people. Anyways, so Shallan kills the Ghostbloods that are trying to find Ba-Ado-Mishram, and also helps overcome some of her mental problems, like dealing with, I don't know, she doesn't really deal with much. Radiance still exists, Veil exists, Unformed, or whatever that thing was called, doesn't exist, but still exists, I don't know. Rlain and Renarin admit their attraction to each other, and through the power of two races find Ba-Ado-Mishram, and then free her, righting the wrong Tanavas made millennia ago. So they do find her prism, which had been cracked, and that's why she was sort of hints of her have been popping up throughout the story. And they sort of had seen the history of why she was betrayed and how she wants to kill everyone and whatnot. But they're like, we don't think she's actually evil. We're going to free her and sort of right this wrong. And so that's what they do. The two of them together, human and singer, shatter the prism and release Ba-Ado-Mishram. And in doing so, it rights the wrong that Tanavas have made. So this brings more awareness and life to the dead-eyed Spren, who are abandoned after the false desolation. So that starts to reset that. So this whole time, Shallan has two Spren, by the way, Testament and a Pattern. Testament's sort of getting better at this point, although, yeah, that isn't really totally cleared up. It also freed the power of honor to accept Dalinar as its new host. So it's at this point that the contest has started. So Dalinar's on the top of Erithreu, as seen here. Odium shows up and is like, I choose my champion. I choose your grandson, who I kept in the spiritual realm for 20 years and trained him to hate you. Which is just sort of out of nowhere, because Gavinar, his grandson, not even his grandson, his wife's grandson, had accidentally fallen into the perpendicularity with them and had been in these visions. And while Navani had thought that she had brought Gavinar out, she didn't actually. It was all faked by Taravangian Odium. And Odium had kept him there, and because of time works differently in the spiritual realm, he was actually held there for 20 years and trained to hate and kill Dalinar. So Taravangian's like, all right, here's my champion. You kill your grandson and you win. And Dalinar's like, what? I'm not going to do that. It doesn't actually fight him. Odium like freezes Gavinar and like reveals to Gavinar, like Gavinor, sorry. Yeah, I don't really care for you. I was lying to you the whole time. I just wanted to make you hate and want to kill your grandfather. So Gavinor's pretty messed up. I mean, that kid is like, talk about mental issues. We're gonna need Kaladin like to spend a few years with Gavinor after all this. Gavinor as a baby was tortured by Spren, and then had 20 years in the spiritual realm by the god of hate, who then like betrayed him at the moment that. Yeah. Anyways. So Dalinar's like, what am I going to do? The Power of Honor won't accept him, but then because Adam Ysham has been released, and for whatever reason, he says magical words, and the Power of Honor accepts him. So Dalinar ascends to become Honor. And as soon as he does this, he's like, wow, look at all the wrong Odium's done. The Power of Honor demands that I fight him. So they just like are going to have a big fight, and then Dalinar's like, wait, this will literally destroy the world. I can't do this. And also how honor follows oaths and bonds. Yeah, so Dalinar sees that honor follows oaths and bonds, but not always what is right and just. So Dalinar's like, there is a third option. I renounce all my oaths. I break every single oath. Like, this is Dalinar, whose whole thing was like the oath bringer. He's all about oaths and righteousness and just and honor. But in this moment, he sort of comes to the realization that no, this is wrong. Oaths, you shouldn't hold everything to oaths. Like, it's not always right. And he gets the Power of Honor to sort of accept this, but not accept it. But he's like, the Power of Honor needs to learn what it is to be right and what honor actually means. And it's not all about sticking to your word no matter what. Like, it's not, the world isn't black and white, there is some gray. So anyway, so Dalinar breaks every oath that Honor and Odium ever had. Any deal, any everything, breaks it all. So this contest is now meaningless. But also, the thing that they had made millennia ago that locked Odium to Roshar is now gone. So now Odium's free to travel the universe and take over the whole... But wait, Odium has only just taken on the... Taravangian has only just taken on the form of Odium, and he's expecting to have centuries, if not millennia, to sort of consolidate power, to sort of plan and scheme and whatnot. Dalinar takes that all away from him. At this moment, all of the other shards and all the Cosmere, all the other gods realize, oh, Odium, that very pesky little god that killed all these other gods, and we didn't worry about because he was trapped on Roshar. He's no longer trapped on Roshar. So the dozen or so gods suddenly all fix their eyes on Odium, which means Odium's in trouble. So Dalinar, where am I at? The power of honor leaves him, Dalinar. Odium takes it up with the powers of two shards, becomes retribution. So honor abandons Dalinar because he obviously broke oaths, much like it abandoned Tanavast. So Odium's like, well, there's the power of another god here, I might as well take it. So Odium and honor combine to create retribution, much like I think it was Sazed. He took on, was it Ruin and Preservation in the Mistborn series and became Harmony. So not just Odium was a bad dude to begin with, but now he's like super powerful. He's got two shards. He's called Retribution. However, because he has taken honor into him, he has to sort of obey oaths and whatnot and do what honor says. So like the deal with the Shattered Plains and Azir, even though the contest is no more, the power of honor within Retribution says that he has to obey those contracts. So those two places do get to remain free of Odium, of Retribution. Retribution kills the Stormfather. That's his first act. Just instantly kills the Stormfather, the last remnant of Tanavast. And then he goes to kill Dalinar, but Dalinar's already been killed by the wind and the power and everything. So Dalinar has sort of rushed over and protected Gavinar's body because there's like this huge storm happening. So Dalinar dies. Gavinar is saved. But then there's this weird thing where like Retribution goes to sort of steal the soul of Dalinar, but then he gets taken away somewhere. I don't know if it's taken to Braze or if it's into the spiritual realm or if someone else deals with it. I don't know. But I suspect Dalinar will be back at some point. I don't think he's dead. If Kelsier comes back, I'm sure Dalinar will come back. But then Retribution goes into the spiritual realm and finds a fragment of Dalinar there. In one of the visions, and Dalinar was at the height of the Blackthorn, where he killed his wife by burning her alive accidentally. So in a vision previously in this book, Dalinar had faced that version of himself and sort of granted some of his memories to that version to sort of explain, like, you'll become a better man, look what I endured, it will be okay. And that sort of, in a way, gave life to that version of the Blackthorn. And then Odium just sort of plucks that version from the spiritual realm. Was like, well, I can still use this as my sort of general champion to take over the universe. So that's his plan. Yeah, so he thinks, Retribution thinks he won the day until he realizes that all the oaths are broken. He is no longer bound to Roshar, which means he doesn't have eternity to consolidate power and get used to his new godhood. The battle for the Cosmere begins now, and all the other gods turn their attention to him and see him as the biggest threat to the Cosmere. But also Stormlight is no more. Stormlight was an aspect of honor. Honor is no more, so there's no more Stormlight in the Stormlight archive. How's that going to work? So Radiants can't use Surges. Fabrials, Oathgates don't work. They don't even have them for light anymore. This is going to be a very different world in Book 6. Also, Shallan is stuck in the spiritual realm. Spiritual, that's what it is. No, it's not spiritual. It's Shadesmar. What is Shadesmar called? Physical realm, spiritual realm, mental realm, mind realm, Shadesmar. Shallan is stuck in Shadesmar. She can't get out because the Oathgates don't work. Also, Retribution's first thing is like, I gotta kill Wit. Like, Wit is super powerful. I gotta go kill Wit. And as this is happening, Wit's like, crap, he's gonna instantly kill me. I have the power of a Dawn Shard inside of me, which again, Dawn Shards are something that you need to know, have read other books. But basically there are 4 Dawn Shards. They were used to create a weapon that killed Adonalcium. Wit has one, even though people thought that he didn't, but he like lied about it, but he does have one. Risen, is that her name, Risen? Also has one. There's an interlude in this book where the two of them meet, and it was almost a really big deal because 2 Dawn Shards cannot meet. So then Risen has to flee Roshar. Anyways, Hoyd, Wit, whatever, goes to Sigzil, and he's like, Sigzil, you gotta take this Dawn Shard. I'm gonna get killed. Just hold on to it. No one will have to know. You need to take it, get off planet. I will come get it at some point. So he gives it to Sigzil, and then immediately turns around. He's like, oh, Taravangian, hi. I was just, boom. Turns into a red mist, totally evaporated, disintegrated. Wit's killed. However, of course, it's Wit. Turns out he has this magical ability that, like, it feels like Wolverine powers. He will regenerate from the largest piece of him that's left. So he has this really cool thing where, back on Scadrial, the planet of Mistborn, he had a chunk of him stored in a tube, so that when he's totally disintegrated on Roshar, that chunk of him on Scadrial becomes the largest part of him, and so he regrows from that. So he wakes up on Scadrial, and he's like, oh, okay, I'm out. Great. Whatever. Sigzil then took the Dawn Shard from Hoyd and joined the Eerie Exodus to the New Land. So the Eerie, is that what they're called, Eerie? It sounds like spooky, the Eerie. They are not human. They're apparently some weird alien race who... Their whole thing is about new experiences for the one. Like, everyone is connected. We are all this one God, and every new experience we have is a new experience for the one. Anyways, they exist in this one part of Roshar, and at one point in this book, a giant portal opens up, and they're like, oh, we've got to go. It's like their whole culture is set on these huge exoduses. Every millennia or so, they go to a new planet. So they're on this mass migration. So Sigil joins with them to sort of leave. Actually, I can't remember how he got there, because how did he get to the Shadesmar to traverse the... Anyways, whatever. He's there. Also, Szeth Spren is there with him and sort of talks to Sigil about Kaladin. Anyways, I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. Yeah. And apparently there's some sort of time dilation that's affecting Roshar now because of magical god reasons. So because Odium and Honor have fused to create Retribution, the whole planet is now surrounded in this time bubble where time passes much slower for people on Roshar than for the rest of the Cosmere. So the reason for that is probably some sort of story device where some characters are going to be aged and some characters are not going to be aged, and we're going to have a time skip for some characters but not a time skip for others. I don't know. Maybe it's just so that Hoyd can deal with stuff on Scadrial for a few books and then still have time to hop back to Roshar and no time will have passed, sort of thing. Yeah, so Shallan's stuck in the spiritual realm. She's in this sort of tent city where a lot of refugees are stuck. They still have food and stuff transported from off-world. She communicates with Thydekar and the Ghost Bloods, and they're not interested in Roshar anymore because Stormlight doesn't exist. Yeah, also there's a hint that Shallan's pregnant because she like touches her stomach and says she's not fighting for only herself anymore. I'm interpreting that as Shallan being pregnant as a 19-year-old. Yikes. No, I guess that's fine. Yeah, that's it. That's the book. It's so big, so much happens. And it'll be like 8 years until the next one. It's gonna be a while. Holy cow. I don't know if I'll read the next one. I said this the last book. I was like, oh, I think I'm done with Sanderson, but yeah. Anyways, I'm exhausted from talking about this book. I don't know what else to say about it. This is going to be the longest video ever. Very young adult. It's young adult in that like the characters are teenagers and like early 20s, like they're young adults, but it still has like Dalinar and Navani and like Szeth and Wit. Like it does have adult and older characters in it, but it still feels like young adult. I don't know. But it still has really dark moments. Anyways, we're just going to stop. That was Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderman.